When you think Chicago, you think old style. Let's see what this beer is all about.
Jordan has come up with another.
You think about this.
There's no doubt about you being a true Cub fan, is there?
That's awfully close to fan interference right
You are
there.
a pro.
That's right.
The sausage king of Chicago.
Give me some of your old style.
The beer.
Chicago loves this beer, but is it actually a Chicago beer? Well, the answer is no. Old Style is actually from La Crosse, Wisconsin. So the question is, how did a Wisconsin beer end up becoming Chicago's beer? To find out, we're going to head back to 1885, when two German immigrants, Gottlieb Heilemann and John Gund, opened a small brewery in La Crosse. They called it the G. Heilemann Brewing Company, and their goal was similar to that of many German migrants to the United States. That was to bring the rich, full-flavored lagers of Germany to the growing, thirsty towns of the Midwest United States. And guess what? You guys have heard this story before. German immigrants, great beer, America, it worked. By the turn of the century, the Heilemann Brewing Company had become one of Wisconsin's most respected breweries. Around the year 1900, they decided it was time for a new flagship beer, one that celebrated those old world traditions. They launched a beer called Old Times Lager. But after another brewery complained about the name, Heilemann switched it up. In 1902, they officially renamed this beer Old Style Lager. That's what stuck, and that's where the legend began. Now, what made Old Style special wasn't just the name, it was how it was brewed. Heilemann employed a traditional German brewing technique known as krausening. Now, krausening, if you don't know, is where you add actively fermenting beer to finished beer, and it naturally carbonates. No shortcuts, no forced CO2, a really nice, beautiful textured beer. In fact, I'm curious if they still do that. If I had to guess, they probably don't. But when they were building their brand early in the 1900s, they were using this traditional German technique called krausening. So, by the 1910s, Old Style was a hit across the Midwest. Wisconsin at the time was absolutely booming with breweries, and they had nearly 200 at the time, with Old Style in many ways leading the way and gaining a very loyal rabid following. So of course, in 1920, Prohibition hit, and the Heilemann Brewing Company did what many breweries did at the time to stay alive, which is make, a low alcohol version of their beer. They called it New Style. Didn't quite have the same buzz, but it kept the workers employed, kept the brand name alive. When Prohibition finally ended, of course, Heilemann wasted no time firing up the kettles again. Old Style was back and better than ever and had tons of momentum. Over the next few decades, it became a symbol of Midwestern pride, but the real magic happened when beer crossed state lines. In the 1950s, Heilemann started marketing Old Style heavily in Chicago. The timing could not have been better. The Cubs were America's beloved, lovable underdogs. I guess in perpetuity. Shots fired. The city was thriving, and Old Style was exactly the kind of beer that fit the mood. Simple, reliable, and proudly blue collar. Bars all over Chicago putting up those iconic Old Style signs in their windows, that script lettering. And by 1957, the brewery officially dropped lager from the name, and from then on, it was just known as Old Style. So by the 1960s and 70s, Old Style was firmly in Chicago's grasp. It had now become the official beer of the Chicago Cubs, sold at Wrigley Field, in taverns all over the place, and a standby at backyard barbecues every summer. So meanwhile, the Heilemann Brewing Company actually kept growing. It became one of the biggest independent breweries in America. And at one point, if you guys are familiar with the channel and you watched the Grain Belt video, you'll remember that the Heilemann Brewing Company actually purchased Grain Belt at one point before it was absorbed by Pabst, another regional heavyweight. If you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. We'll link it down below. But like a lot of great regional brewers, Heilemann themselves got caught up in corporate buyouts and consolidation. By the 1990s, the company had been sold, and the Old Style brand changed hands several times before ultimately winding up in the hands of the Pabst Brewing Company, where it still resides today. As recently as 2023, Pabst announced that Old Style was returning home to La Crosse, Wisconsin, where it all began more than a century ago, under the same skyline where Gottlieb Heilemann first opened shop in 1885. So, let's give this beer a try. As I so often do, I'll first comment on the appearance of the can. which once again, it has that similar sort of red, yellow, white motif. It has this kind of like bronze ink illustration thing, which is really kind of cool, right? So the illustration on here harkens back to what seems like almost medieval times. You've got some really ancient looking illustrations here of a kettle within like a fireplace, really old school stuff, some barrels coming down the thing here. Of course, you got some mountains at the top. In comparison to most macro lagers, most macro regional lagers that we've tasted on the channel, this one has a really nice, interesting design that you can kind of look at and maybe find something new in each time. Here it says Old World Methods, pure and genuine, of course. 4.6% alcohol, please recycle. Oldstylebeer.com, 16 ounces. Not too much about the beer. If I had to guess, it's going to be an American light corn lager, but we will find out by pouring it into the glass. Guys, 70% of people who watch the channel actually don't subscribe, and you know, it's a huge help to us that you do so, and you won't miss future content. So do us a favor and hit that button. Also, leave your stories down below. We can't address all of them, but man, we've had people who have worked in the regional breweries. We've had brewmasters and cellar people and family members, and all those things comment down below. So if you're watching this and you have any direct relation to Old Style, reach out. Beautiful light golden color in the glass. Tons of similarities to other macro style lagers that we've talked about on the channel. Great effervescence, beautiful clarity, obviously filtered. Just a really pretty, appetizing beer. Great, dense, rocky head retention. It's one of the best attributes of these macro lagers, in my opinion, is the appearance. It always looks appetizing, always really well cared for. Beautiful looking beer. On the aroma. So we've got some like cereal malts, really kind of a basic nose, clean lager fermentation, not a lot of kind of like fruity expressions, very, very clean. Simple beer. Smells like a beer that you'd have in a dive bar. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's a very straightforward, no frills beer, straight to the point. Not a lot of hop aroma, has that classic lager yeast aroma to it. Tiny bit earthy if I'm really trying to pull at it on the flavor. Oh, before I do, I often comment on the freshness. So the best buy on this beer is February 26. It's currently November of 25, which means that this beer is probably 3 or 4 months old. Michael, how did you pick it up?
Suds was in Chicago at a rugby match with James from Garston. He got it at a Walgreens and bought it cold and kept it cold all the way here.
All right, so we bought this Old Style in Chicago, kept it cold the whole time. We think it's about 3 or 4 months old in the package. Here we go on the taste. You guys who watch the channel know that it's my belief that macro lager is often very, very well made, usually super palatable, great when cold. I'm not digging this beer. There's something really funky about it. It's pretty dry, it's pretty crisp. The flavor's strange. There's nothing off about it per se. God, it's got like so little hop character that it's almost like sweet fermented malt, lager yeast character. God, in terms of like the regional beers, this is one that I find to be the least appetizing. Almost tastes alcohol-y. As strange as that sounds, I'm almost getting like a pure ethanol note, which in a beer that at 4.6% alcohol is really, really, really kind of bizarre. So yeah, I get like a pure rubbing alcohol ethanol note. And man, I have to be honest, I'm not digging the Old Style. It reminds me of some of the similarities of what I disliked about Grain Belt. Very kind of plain and straightforward, kind of a bit of an awkward sweetness in the mid palate, and then absolutely no bitterness to balance any of that sweetness out, which means I don't want to go back for a sip. So in terms of objective flaw, I'm not really finding any. My kind of hope for this beer is that the recipe would be a little bit different. but I can understand why people enjoy this beer. I can understand why it hits the mark. But for me, this is going to fall kind of toward the bottom of my impressions of the regional beers that we've tried on the channel. Most of these macro lagers we're not reviewing for technical acumen. Most of these beers don't exhibit technical flaws or off flavors. It's just discerning what you like in a recipe. And for me personally, having like the faintest bit of hop character to balance the sweetness is critically important. And for me, like Grain Belt, this beer doesn't have those things. And so for me, I find it difficult to drink. As it warms up, it's going to get less and less palatable. I want it to be crisper. I want it to be punchier. That ethanol note's kind of strange. Guys, leave your thoughts in the comments. I don't know. I mean, oftentimes beers are what we gravitate toward because it's what we know or what we have nostalgia for. Is this the beer that you get cheap at the bar and we have nostalgia for that reason? Or do we drink it because we like the taste? I'm not really sure. In my case, I have to believe there's a lot of nostalgia and sense of place that goes with a love of old style, which is okay. All right, guys, so that's old style. I think a lot of nostalgia drives the love of this beer. I didn't love it. Falls toward the bottom of the regional beers for me. Of course, everyone has a different palate. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching. We have many beers upcoming, even Yingling, so get subscribed. See you next time.